case anybody's made it this far into the podcast and it's like, what is copywriting? Because I know a lot of the times people think that it's like, oh, you do put the C in the circle and then you do the legal stuff. Of course, everybody who works in internet marketing or other kinds of marketing knows that copy is the writing that you use to sell something. So you can think of what was happening on Madison Avenue with Mad Men back in the 50s, those kinds of advertising geniuses trying to come up with like pithy little things to sell something. And then as copywriting kind of advanced, or actually it's been around for a long time, it's always been like, how do you write something to compel somebody to take action on that whatever outcome you're desiring them to take action on. So if you're going to try and sell Ryan something, it's like, hey, I have the perfect business opportunity for you to work at home in your boxers. You never have to leave and you'll make $1 million. Ryan's going to buy it. You just have to convince him to do it. And that's copywriting. So Patriot on Purpose. Today we're joined by probably one of the America's best known copywriters, maybe even the world's. It's Ryan Healy. Now, this is true. When I found you on the internet back in 2009, your website said that you were the world's most referred direct response copywriter on the internet. So if it says it on a website, it has to be true. I've learned this. It's got to be true.
It's got to be true.
No, but arguably you are, Ryan. You're one of the most well-known copywriters there is. I've known you for going on, I guess it would be 14 years now. No, 13 years. 2011 is when we would have met. So glad to have Ryan Healy in the house. And we're going to have a pretty fun time talking about all kinds of things. Definitely copywriting, business, all that good stuff. And, of course, may go into the weeds a little bit, end up talking about Bigfoot, aliens, and some of the good things that I know that most of our listeners in Uzbekistan are interested in.
So Oregon. No, just kidding.
Basically Oregon. So Ryan, on the podcast, clearly we have a name, being Patriot on Purpose. We start off every segment just asking people what do they think a patriot is, because at one time the word was synonymous with being a good person. Now, if you're self-identifying as a patriot or being labeled by another party as a patriot, it's actually can be derogatory. So what do you think it means, and do you think it's derogatory the way that everybody else thinks it is?
It could be derogatory, I guess, if it's used by the left, but to me a patriot is somebody who puts country first, or I'm not saying put country over God or family necessarily, but somebody who puts the country high up there in priority list and wants, in this particular case, America or the United States to do better than other countries, and to think of our own interests first and to protect our country. So that's kind of how I think of somebody who's a patriot. And then I think there's a lot of other characteristics that go along with somebody who's a patriot. Usually patriots are religious or believe in a higher power, believe in the Christian God, stuff like that. So
do you also think they like guns? Because I do. I think patriots like guns.
They also do like guns. That's true. Guns and maybe some food in the basement.
And some gold.
And gold and silver.
Yeah, speaking of which, I was just listening to an episode of one of my favorite podcasts called Blurry Creatures. Might as well go straight into the Bigfoot stuff. And this guy he was a former criminal investigator, specifically in arson. He won Investigator of the Year, as a matter of fact, a couple years, like a decade and a half ago or something. And he recently started to investigate the Copper Scroll, which is a scroll found in in Karam, or was it Karami? I can't remember, where all the Dead Sea Scrolls are found. What was the name of that place? I should have known it because I was just listening to it. Nonetheless, he thinks he has located all of Solomon's gold. So, about to be a big come up on some massive amounts of gold. I'd like a little bit.
Wow. That would be a lot.
I heard he had a lot.
I think this guy is assessing his, if the gold listed on the copper tablets would equate to present day value, it would be about $2 billion, which I guess it's a lot. It's not that much. It's probably enough to fit inside of a Volkswagen van.
Thought it would have been a little more
what's crazy
than that.
is they say that if you were to take all of the gold that has been mined since time immemorial and put it into like one centralized spot, it would barely fill up 2 Olympic-sized swimming pools.
I've heard that.
It's staggering.
It's pretty wild. But I mean, every single ounce of gold requires a lot of human effort and machine effort, and to extract it, refine it, and all that. So I mean, it's believable.
I just think there'd be more of it, because like there's a gold pawn shop, or we buy gold in pawn shops, and there's all these people walking around with gold on them. But yeah, it's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Yes. So before we dive into like the present day things that are going on with you, Ryan, like would love to kind of look back a little bit, like where things started for you, where you're from, like
Sure.
where you grew up, what that looked like.
Military kid, then changed to Boeing, was Air Force, so moved all over from Florida to Colorado Springs to Seattle to Huntsville, Alabama, and then back to Denver, Colorado, where my dad worked at Buckley for over 30 years for Boeing before he retired.
Okay.
So all
So
those
some pretty
moves
big-
happened
I mean-
by the age of 12. So I've been here since I was 12 years old.
Okay, wow. So but a lot of moving before 12. So how old were you when you went from Washington to Alabama?
I think I was about 10, and
Okay.
then we moved there. Moved from Alabama right after I turned 12, summer before my 7th grade year. So yeah.
What was that like for you moving around that much?
I was always the new kid. I had to say goodbye to all my best friends every couple of years, and that was hard. It was sad. I cried. I had to leave everything behind, and I'm like, oh man, I got to do this again. And a lot of times we didn't move in the summer. We moved in the middle of the school year, so I was the kid being introduced as, walked into the school middle of the day. This is Ryan. He's the new kid, and you got to say hi to Ryan and sit in the desk and all that. So
Not fun.
At the time, I didn't like it, but it did help me to become the person I am today. And it's easy for me to make friends. It's easy to meet people and say hello and things like that. I know that's not true for everybody. So
How else has that impacted you in the way that you've developed?
I would say it's kind of made me want to have a stable place for my kids and send down roots for them. I think that's important, and then try to allow them to have relationships with extended family who are in the area and things like that, which I didn't really have. I didn't really have much of a relationship with my grandparents or my cousins because we saw them so infrequently. So I would say it's impacted me in that way, just how I raise my own family.
Yeah, that makes sense. How much do you think it's played into just you being resilient? Because I know like you've had a number, your entrepreneurial, kind of career existence, has taken a number of different forms over the years, but how much do you think it's affected you on that level, positively or negatively?
That's a good question. I mean, I think it has contributed to my resilience. I'm not sure that I could make a direct connection, but I assume that it's made me resilient. Just the different challenges that I faced in the different places I lived. As an example, in Huntsville, I didn't technically live in Huntsville. It was a town called Ardmore, Alabama, which is 4 miles from the Tennessee border. This would have been about 1989 we moved there.
Nice. Okay.
And my family, my parents had 5 kids. I'm the oldest, and my dad was an engineer and was doing well for himself. And so in Ardmore, he bought the largest house essentially in Ardmore. That's easy to do. Ardmore is a very small town. but he had to because he had 5 kids, right? So they needed space. But all of a sudden it was like everybody knew that, this family that's got college degrees just moved in and bought the biggest house in Ardmore.
They got the big house.
They got the big house, and they don't have an accent, so they must be Yankees. And so we faced a little bit of discrimination because of that, or at least I did as a kid. It'd be different if
you were seen as.
Yeah, go ahead.
I would say you were seen as different. You were foreign in that respect.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I have a distinct memory of playing on the baseball team, trying to play on the baseball team, and they wouldn't play me because I was the new kid and whatever. They didn't need to. And this kid, Brad, he goes, well, you're a Yankee. And I said, well, I was born in Florida. He goes, well, you're a Southern Yankee.
It's the best he could come up with in the moment. He was like, you're still not one of us.
Yeah, exactly.
Hold on, how far north?
Oh, that's
how
funny.
far north was the?
No, when I
farthest
first
north you had lived, or the furthest north?
That time Seattle. I mean, that's
Yeah.
pretty north, but yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty. That's the Pacific Northwest, though. I don't know if that's
No,
if
that's
that
just
identifies as a Yankee.
Right. Yeah. I mean, literally, where I lived was from Florida to Seattle,
Yeah.
so a diagonal line.
Oh,
I
yeah.
had
You
actually
did the
never
corners.
lived up in the north, in the
Yeah, you did
quote,
the corners.
the north, the Union.
That's funny. When I after I had graduated from UT and got out in the working world, I got asked all the time, like, "You're from Texas? Like, you don't have an accent?" And I was like, "Well, I grew up in a town where like people from all over the world lived. There was no accent. But if you went 20 minutes down the road, I'd have more teeth than anybody else like in the rest of the room combined, most likely." So I mean, in the area I lived, like there were some smaller towns like close to our town. We were in a northeast suburb of Houston, so there was a lot of oil executives and airline pilots and things like that, doctors, lawyers. But no, so I can relate to that. So man, all right, so you played baseball. Like what else? So I know that and Adam could probably speak to this better than me. I didn't move around a whole lot. Like when I was a kid, I was very fortunate that in the ways that benefited me. Like I know a couple people in my life that they grew up military or they were like international bankers. Their dad was like an international banker, and they lived in New York, and they lived in Texas, and they lived in Mexico, and they lived in Italy, and I think at one point Korea. And
Wow.
I'd noticed with their kids, like very resilient people. Like you kind of drop them in anywhere and they can figure it out. Like they're not scared to be thrown into foreign
I can't
environments.
Well, I was just gonna say I can't.
But
Speak to that
so
too, being a military.
Go ahead.
And then I lived in Japan for 3 years. I've been to Korea. Almost got to meet the president of Korea,
wow.
but he didn't want to meet little kids. Go figure. Yeah, and I think I moved around like 10 to 11 different locations before I was 13. So very similar to Ryan in that. And yeah, I would say that resilience translates because you're forced to adapt. And if you don't, then I think you just retreat into your shell, and then it would make those situations all that much worse. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you mentioned you played baseball. Like, is that kind of the thing that? Because I would imagine, again, and not speaking from experience, but I would imagine if you're moving that often, like there would be, I would think you would want to have some kind of anchor or something that was consistent, or like something that gave normalcy that like you could pick up wherever you were at. Did you have anything like that? Was that baseball, or was it something else? Or was it just, the family that came in and bought the big house?
Yeah. I mean, I guess my siblings provided some continuity for me
Okay.
over the years. I tried baseball. I tried soccer. When I got to Colorado, I tried basketball and track and field and wrestling. And I was kind of more of a dabbler. And I think that was partially because when I tried the different sports, like, for example, I tried soccer in Seattle. And again, it was like, new kid, don't really need to give him playing time, And unless you're somewhere for a couple of years, it's really hard to get that traction as a kid on a team. And
Right.
And so instead of trying to play soccer again in the next place, I went, oh, maybe I'll try baseball, in the next place, maybe I'll try basketball. Similar thing happened. I tried to play saxophone, and I picked that up in Alabama. Parents bought me the saxophone. I thought it was cool. I was first chair in Alabama, but then we moved. We had an intermediate stop in El Dorado, Kansas, for about 2 or 3 months. I don't remember the exact amount of time. But that's where my grandmother lived, and so after we'd sold the property in Alabama, I lived with my grandmother and my mom and my siblings while my dad was out in Denver getting the house and setting up the new place and everything. So I had to finish 6th grade there, and suddenly I was no longer first chair because my saxophone had been packed up and we'd been moving, and they were studying different things. They were at a different place. And so now I was middle chair, right? I'm like, oh, well, that stinks. But again, didn't have a great place to practice and whatever. Then we moved to Colorado, and they're in a different place, and suddenly I'm last chair. So I went from first to middle to last, and it was all because of that discontinuity of not being able to play and practice or to continue with the group at the same pace that they were moving. So that was kind of disappointing, and then I kind of just gave it up and switched to learning German at that point in 8th grade. So 7th grade was the last year I did saxophone.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I mean, so you're really like multi-tool player. Like you just really experienced and did a lot. And it sounds like, you know, that moving around and changing spaces and places like really kind of fostered, you know, you, I guess, exploring in that sense.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Cool. No, that makes a lot of sense. So when did entrepreneurism like start to show up?
That started showing up in Alabama. There was a 16-year-old kid named Brad Hemphill who was in my 6th grade class. He was 15 years old in my 5th grade class when I started there. And and he was a big kid, and he was kind of a bully. And he worked in a junkyard with his dad. Junkyard didn't even have a telephone number.
It was just the junkyard.
Okay.
And the law, and the way the state law read was you couldn't drop out until you were 16 years old and you had at least finished 6th grade. But if you flunked a class twice in a row, you automatically got passed to the next grade. So he just flunked every grade twice until they passed him on, and then so then in 6th grade, he ended up getting seated.
So he was in his 6th grade 2-year rotation.
Yeah, this was his first year in 6th grade, and he might have passed because he wanted to copy my homework. So I started letting him copy my homework, and he would slip me $1 a sheet for my homework, and I would just sit on the corner of my desk, and he would just kind of look over, and just before class started.
That's how you got your first job.
So suddenly you have this kid who's flunking. Yeah. My first copywriting job, although it was copying in a different kind of way.
You copy my writing, and you pay me.
That's funny.
Yeah. So that was my first taste of entrepreneurialism. I'm like, oh, hey, this guy's paying me to. I'm like, I'm already doing the work. Yeah, sure. Give me some money.
It's like, let me scale myself
and then you're like, let me tell your dad how we can write a letter to all of the people in Ardmore about how they can take their junk to his junkyard. I promise it'll crush it.
Yeah. And you know, the teacher might have suspected, or she might have seen Brad copying my homework or whatever, but she probably thought, yeah, good riddance, get this kid out of here from 1 year instead of 2.
She's like, yeah, no kidding, right? She's like, I don't want that 2 year. This 2 years might be too much. Right. That's funny. So you know, what was you know, did that kind of like spark something, and things just kind of continued to develop from there, or you know, kind of like what?
Yeah,
kind of how did things go from there?
Yeah, I moved to Denver, and immediately my mom, she was always my pitch man, so to speak. You know, we'd be in a situation, she'd just go, oh, you should hire my son Ryan. He's really responsible. He'll, you know. And so she got me some jobs that way. I'd always be embarrassed, like, Mom, come on, you know, like they're not interested. and then I would end up getting hired for something. So I got hired at the Richmond Model Homes at the front of my neighborhood in Highlands Ranch. Highlands Ranch was very, very small at that time. Now it's massive, but the two guys there, Jim and Jim, the two Jimbos.
The two Jims.
They wanted me to water all the plants in the model home so they wouldn't have to. So I'd come down there every Saturday. I'd water all the plants in the 4 different model homes. They'd give me $5 cash. So that was my job. And then I started getting house sitting jobs and babysitting jobs and snow shoveling and mowing grass, like pretty much whatever whatever was available, I would do it, and so that's really how I got started. I even did some door-to-door stuff. One time I delivered 2,000 flyers door-to-door in Highlands Ranch on rollerblades. So I was able to speed it up,
Okay.
hanging the flyers. And then he didn't give me any specific rules about where to go. So I just said, well, I'm going to go to places I haven't been. So I basically started where I live, and I just started working out, right? Well, I ended up crossing a major road into another neighborhood, and apparently hired another guy to distribute flyers. And I found that on every door, or every garage door, there were not one flyer, but 2 flyers. So this guy was ripping off the business owner by putting 2 flyers on every door. So if he got 1,000 flyers, he's only hitting 500 houses. So we were getting paid for volume, right? So for each block of 500 that we distributed, we got a fee. And
so there's those who put on rollerblades and do it faster than there's those who put two flyers on every garage door.
Yeah. So I told him, I called him up and I told him what I'd found, and he fired the other guy.
There you go. Integrity.
Yeah. So that was another job, and then I went door to door raising funds for a mission trip a couple of summers.
Done that.
And it's funny to think back on it.
There's that door to door seems to show up with a lot of successful salespeople.
Yeah.
Because I too did it. It was rough.
Dude, I definitely think it factored into it. You don't seem to be scared to talk to anybody.
Yeah, that's what it takes.
Ever.
You have to move a lot, and then you realize every opportunity in life is just another door to knock on, and then you do it in the 120-degree summer at Bakersfield.
But did you do it with?
Dude,
but did you do it with rollerblades?
When I did it,
that's what I want to know.
When I did it, it was 2008, and it was in Bakersfield, California, which I believe is the second hottest metropolitan area in the United States. So, no, it sucked really bad. Yeah.
That would have been brutal.
Yeah.
All right, so moved around a lot. Sounds like you started getting like some different odds. Well, early experience with entrepreneurism on the copying business that you had going. Did that expand out from him at all?
No.
Okay, so that was just a one-off with him. But so all right, so then fast forward, some odd
Did
jobs.
you want those jobs, or was it just like your mom gave you that first one, and then she was just trying to make you responsible, or were you out there trying to make the money because you're like, wow, I can do this well, and then of course like I have this entrepreneurial sense established, and you just kept going after more opportunities?
Yeah. I went after more stuff. I was knocking on doors in my neighborhood offering to shovel and mow grass and babysit and house sit. I ended up with a lot of different jobs with a lot of different neighbors that way. Back then, at least in my area, there weren't a lot of like franchised corporate lawn mowing services and things like that driving around neighborhoods. You just didn't see that. So back then it was still a lot of neighbors hiring kids. So it was relatively easy. I wasn't competing with much.
Yeah, so you were just freelancing a whole lot on all sorts of different types of odds and ends jobs.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right on, man. All right, so got through high school. I imagine you continued to do the same types of jobs. And then did you go off and you go to college, or what did you do at that point?
I did 1 year of community college, and on a full scholarship, community college, whatever.
Hey man, that's someone else is paying the bill. That's actually pretty cool.
Yeah, so I did that. I just stayed local. My parents, they hadn't set aside anything for college. I knew that, I graduated 17th in my class, so I was, out of 450. GPA was high and everything. Everybody expected me to go to a 4-year university, and then I didn't, just because I didn't want to have the debt hanging over me. And at that time, the prices were getting pretty out of control, and I knew that I wasn't going to get much, if any, help from my parents. So that's why I stayed local. I ended up meeting my wife at that time. We dated for a couple of years. And after that first year, I realized that I needed to figure out how to make money that would support us. So that kind of led to me getting a job installing wire closet shelving for a summer. And that was, I ended up staying for 7 months. It was really intended to be an interim job, but he liked me so well, he just wanted me to keep working with him. I'm like, no, I can't do this forever. This is hard work, laboring 10, 12 hours a day in the summer in uncooled, houses. They're also unheated. So no, they are heated in the winter, but they're uncooled in the summer. Anyway, so I did that, and then I quit that job, and then I set about trying to find a better job that would last me for a while. So I wrote down all these requirements in the job that I was looking for. I prayed over it, and then I started, getting out there, doing interviews and all this stuff. I ended up responding to something that had asked if I had these skills, and I showed up, and the first thing he asked me was, do you have a degree? And I said, well, no. He goes, well, I don't think this company that I represent would be interested in hiring you. And I got really mad at him. And I said, okay, so you put out an ad that said if I had these skills with Microsoft Word and Microsoft Excel and these different things, then I could be a candidate. It said nothing about a 4-year degree, but now that I'm here, you tell me about a new requirement. And so you're false advertising, number one, and you're wasting my time. And I just told this straight to his face, and he was like, whoa. He goes, well, will you take some tests? And I said, yeah, absolutely. Put me on a computer. And so I took all these tests. He goes, okay, well, you know everything, and I will make the introduction and blah, blah, blah. I ended up getting a job at Merrill Lynch, working in the 401k department. So I was a temporary employee for 3 months, and then they hired me on permanently. And then a year later, they promoted me up into a higher level, and so it was a great 3 years. Merrill Lynch was not doing well during that time. They laid off over 1,000 people, and then were shutting down the campus near the end of my time there. And I was not included in that because of the small division I was in. But I saw people who were my age today, mid-40s, people who'd worked for 20 plus years for Merrill Lynch, because they called us all into a big meeting, over 1,000 people there, and just announced that everybody was getting laid off. Except for those who'd been secretly told that they were not getting laid off, which was only about 100 people out of a 1,200 person campus. And so,
and you were included in that 100 people.
Yeah. And so I see all these people like breaking down in tears, and what am I going to do? And like having literal breakdowns right there. And I'm thinking, okay, like I don't want to be that guy at age 45 or age 50 or whatever. Like there's no way I want to be that guy. So that definitely had a formative effect on me. So I was already kind of entrepreneurial, but seeing that happen in real time.
Did you just kind of stumble into the Merrill Lynch job, or was there some intent around that? Like, were you thinking, okay, so it wasn't even, I have a clear vision of where I want to go. It's just, this seems like a good job on paper. I know who Merrill Lynch is. Oh.
I didn't even know it was Merrill Lynch. It was a temp job. They literally just put out an ad saying, we're looking for somebody with these skills. Like if you know Microsoft Word, if you know Microsoft Excel. The year was early 1999. Okay. So there was no indication of who the company was or anything, where it was located. Ended up being right where I wanted it. It was like 10 minutes away, 15 minutes away.
Is that in the DTC? Or the Denver Tech Center? Okay.
Meridian.
Yeah.
Just south of it. Yeah, Meridian.
Sorry, for those who are listening, that's an area in Denver. I used to live there, so I was just trying to find out from Ryan. That's interesting. So you had that wake-up call, and then that inspired you to do something of significance with your life?
Yeah, and that really was the time. It wasn't... It started before that. The whole time I was at Merrill Lynch, I became what's considered a biz op buyer. There wasn't any biz op I didn't like.
You were buying all the opportunities.
Oh yeah, and it was back in the days of where direct mail was a much bigger presence than the internet.
So you're not doing that for
And,
Merrill Lynch.
So I was
you're
getting
doing
So
all
you're
sorts
buying-
of stuff.
So were you buying like
Yeah.
were you buying like Mark Warren stuff and Chris X and all of those guys?
Those don't trigger a bell. But I did buy like commodities trading
Okay.
product, and I did trade commodities, and I bought. I remember one that was just so out there. It was a waste management auditor, and so this idea was that these businesses have contracts with waste management companies, right? And they pay a fee for so many dumpsters and so many times of removal every week. A lot of times
Okay.
they're overpaying. So the idea is you measure how much waste they're using, and you find out that they're overpaying by double or something. You renegotiate the contract and you take half the savings. Anyway, I never did it, but it was a cool idea.
It's a pretty good. It's a pretty good hustle.
I know. Yeah.
That's not one I would have I've never heard of that, but that's pretty awesome.
So yeah, that was one. It kind of all exploded when I got into vending machines and made
Okay.
a really, really bad investment in vending machines. Lost.
Yeah, what
$30,000.
was bad about the vending machines?
It was a company that did, get you in a room, get you on a mailer to come to a presentation, and then they sell you these machines that cost, I forget, something like $5,000-$6,000 a piece. And this is back in the year 2000 when $5,000-$6,000 was a lot of money.
Yeah, that was a lot.
I ended up buying, I think, 5 machines for $30,000.
Okay.
And part
You
of
were
us-
all in.
I was all in. All I gotta do is place these machines, and I'll start making tons of money.
That's it.
And they even part of their pitch was, you buy these machines, and we'll give you a list of businesses to mail, printed on labels, and then we'll give you the printed sales material as well, like postcard stuff, right? So all you have to do, label all these things, put the postage on it, drop it in the mail, and then you're supposed to get your machines placed.
It was Perry Belcher there on stage.
No. So I mailed everything out, super hopeful. I did have some doubts when I started looking at the business names on the list that they had sent me. When I saw Borders.
Borders Books, yeah.
Remember Borders, the
With
bookstore?
a full service
Borders
restaurant
Books.
inside.
Okay.
I was like, Borders is not gonna respond to this, so I put a vending machine in their in their bookstore. Like, that doesn't make any sense. But I was at that point, I'm like, okay, well, I'm in too deep. I got to mail these out. I did end up placing 2.5 machines, roughly. So I say 2.5 because the way these came, it was like a beverage machine and then a snack machine that hung on the front. So you could put either or. You could set up a snack machine individually, put them together, or drink by itself. It's just a lot of work to service vending machines, especially if you have a full-time job, and especially if you have a Hyundai Elantra with no cooling or anything like that. So I was trying to service machines on my lunch break, and we made some money, but it was nowhere near what I needed to make to clear the 30,000. So in hindsight, it was a horrible decision. I went on eBay at that time to try to sell my machines, found out they were selling for pennies on the dollar. Not just my type of machines, but all vending machines. You could go and you could buy
Oh no.
you could buy 10 vending machines for maybe $1,000 back then. And I'm like, why did I not just go on eBay? So there was another guy in the area who was a smart operator, and he just waited. He just held on. He's like, well, I'll give you the X for your machines, because I contacted him. And then I just had to say yes at a certain point. I'm like, yeah, fine. So this guy had built a vending machine business, basically getting all new equipment from people like me, suckers who had paid full price. So
Got it.
yeah.
So learn that lesson. So still at it. You're still trying to figure out the entrepreneurial side of things. Like, what did that? So what So what did you transition from there? What did that turn into?
So that turned into me being open to leaving Merrill Lynch because I knew that the company was on the rocks. I was approached by a family friend, John Holtzman. He and his wife had started a company called Sunlight Curriculum.
It's huge
it's a
now,
homeschooling company,
isn't it?
They started that.
Okay.
Yeah, it's big. It's been big for a long time. But yeah, they started I think 1990, 91, and their kids, and then me and my siblings, we were all kind of friends at the time in Highlands Ranch, and I had actually worked in their warehouse at one point when I was 13, 14 years old. For a little while, rode my bike to work and worked in their warehouse. So I was aware of them. But John was trying to replace himself, and he did all the marketing for Sunlight. So Sarita was more the educator. Well, he did curriculum too. But Sarita did exclusively like the early years of curriculum up through 6th or 7th or 8th grade, something like that. And then John did the higher levels. But he was the copywriter and the marketer for the company. He did everything. So that's all right. He said, hey Ryan, I know you're entrepreneurial, and I'm trying to find this marketing person to replace me, but I've interviewed a bunch of people and I'm just not finding the right fit, for what I want to do. He goes, would you be open to learning marketing and these things and maybe working for Sunlight? And I said, well, yeah, I'm open to it because I don't think Merrill Lynch is going to be around much longer, or they might be closing down even my branch, at some point. So yeah, I'm open to it. So he said, well, let me give you a writing assignment. He goes, I'm going to have you write 2 pieces, and then I'll pay you for it on the side, just as a contract, and then we'll go from there. So I wrote the 2 pieces, and then John reviewed it, and he came back to me and he goes, I got good news and I got bad news. He goes, the good news is you know how to write, so I don't have to teach you that. But the bad news is you don't know how to sell, at least not in print. So, but I think I can teach you that. So he made me a formal offer, which was a pay cut from Merrill Lynch. So I literally took a pay cut to go over there and work for Sunlight Curriculum. But part of the deal was, he goes, well, I'm going to mentor you. I'm going to teach you how to sell in print. I'm going to teach you advertising. You're going to have access to my whole library of stuff, which included at the time a whole bunch of J. Abraham material and Joe Sugarman and all these classic
the legends.
Guys. Yeah, legends. So so I did that. I ended up working for Sunlight for 3 years, and that's kind of how I cut my teeth with copywriting. Now, to be clear, I wasn't writing long form sales letters or VSLs like we do in our industry, or in the internet marketing industry, I should say. A lot of it was catalog copy and like website copy and descriptive copy and a lot of short form stuff.
Like sharper image type stuff?
Yeah, but for a homeschooling audience, right?
Okay.
I wish you had done sharper image style copy for the homeschool audience. Nothing will make you feel as cool and look as sleek as this awesome book about Boaz.
Boaz. That's funny. I also learned how to do email list management there because I was put in charge of their weekly newsletter that went out, and they had a list of about 35,000 subscribers at the time. That's a lot of people.
What year was this?
2002.
Okay. Yeah, getting it after it. That's cool.
And then he also
you were definitely on the forefront there.
Yeah, and he also put me on GoTo/Overture ads, pay-per-click, which then shortly thereafter I was put on to learn how to do Google AdWords right when it came out. So I was already doing pay-per-click ads on Overture, and then as soon as AdWords started, I was like day one learning how to do that. So
okay. Yeah, that was the early days.
Super early.
Yeah, man, that was wild, wild west.
Yeah, it was.
All right, so you got into email.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, you got into email marketing.
And so
you're working there for 3 years. What kind of sees you into turning into an entrepreneur in the sense that you're going to now do this for yourself?
I like to say God tricked me into becoming a freelance copywriter because the entrepreneurial stuff continued. I tried to partner with a guy on becoming a financial advisor, So I got my Series 6 license to do that. I got interested in it because this guy, Scott, he was handling the 401k for Sunlight. And so he had come in and I started asking him questions and things. He was making about $450,000 a year back in 2004 or 5. And a lot of that was just residuals from his clients. So I got my Series 6 license and then set up this deal to go work, alongside him. I wasn't working for him. Well, I sort of was. The deal was he was generating leads through a newspaper, a local paper that was just thrown on driveways, right? And they had a little postcard in there. It was like, hey, come to this dinner and we'll show you some stuff about making money, right? Classic financial advisor kind of thing. So he said, well, come work with me. I want you to call all of our leads, get them to these dinners, and then I'll pay you, for how many people you're getting there. And at the same time, I'll kind of show you the ropes on starting your financial advisory business. So I got a big bonus check that year, and I quit on a $10,000 bonus check, and then took this opportunity to try to make it work. The week that I quit, that little local newspaper went bankrupt, and so they had one source of leads, and it was gone. So then he still gave me access to their I think it was ACT database is how they were tracking everything. And he goes, well, we still have all these old ones in here, so you can start calling all these old leads. And I'm not kidding you. I was filling dinners with leads that were up to 12 months old.
Wow. Okay. There you go.
So I filled like 3 dinners on all old leads, but that was nowhere near what I needed to make to support my family and keep things rolling. So my bonus money was just kind of just disappearing. And when I had about 2 weeks of money left, I kind of realized that this isn't going to work. I got to do something different. So I figured I could either go beg for my old job back. I could go down to a car dealership and try to sell cars, or I could become a freelance copywriter, which is kind of what I had originally wanted to do, but I was a little too afraid to just quit my job and go freelance because there wasn't really a roadmap that I had or anything for it. I was connected with AW.
Yeah, well, those are the early days. There wasn't any there might have been somebody out there teaching it in the early I guess there were people teaching copyright in the early 2000s, but it was not as prevalent. There wasn't as many curriculums and paths to take.
That was about it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
So I had that course, and so I decided to officially launch my business. I wrote down a 30-day action plan of things that I was going to do. And so, for example, I hit up the direct response jobs board. Don't even know if that still exists, but it did at that time. I went on Craigslist looking for copywriting jobs. That's how I got hired by Josh Bizzoni.
Okay.
Craigslist.
Yeah. Yeah. We were doing some Craigslist ads, if I remember right, in the biotrust days, dude. So he was still fishing from that body of water. Yeah.
So that's how I got hired there. But anyway, I got 3 clients in 2 weeks, and I just said, okay, it's like kind of when something doesn't work and it's not working and you can't keep going, you just got to try something different. And then when I tried freelance copywriting, it was just boom.
How did you arrive at the conclusion
resistance
that freelance copywriter was what you wanted to do? I take it you got that from working at Sunlight. You're like, oh, I'm a copywriter. I could probably do this for other people.
Yeah, I was going through the AWAI program at the same time that I worked for Sunlight. So
is that right?
I kind of knew.
Okay.
No, I bought it on my own. It was one of the business things I responded to. I'm serious, yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I was going through that. So I kind of knew that existed out there. And I had also had this insight in 8th grade. I was walking down the hall of my middle school, and all of a sudden it was just, you're going to be a writer. And I knew that I was going to be a writer. So a lot of my decisions after that were all focused on writing. So that's why I worked on the high school paper for 2.5 years. I took all the honors English programs. When I was at ACC, I worked for the Rap Street Journal, which is the college paper, and I actually got paid to write for them while I was doing classes. So, so being a writer was kind of in the forefront of my mind, but I didn't know about copywriting at that time. So
that's pretty cool. It's cool that you knew at that stage of life that you're like, all right, I don't know exactly what's going to happen here, but I know I'm going to be writing. Like that's pretty good direction for early, that early on.
Here, in case anybody's made it this far into the podcast, and it's like, what is copywriting? Because I know a lot of the times people think that it's like, oh, you do put the C in the circle, and then you do the legal stuff. And of course, everybody who works in internet marketing or other kinds of marketing knows that copy is the writing that you use to sell something. So you can think of what was happening on Madison Avenue with Mad Men back in the 50s, those kinds of advertising geniuses trying to come up with like pithy little things to sell something. And then as copywriting kind of advanced, or actually it's been around for a long time, it's always been like, how do you write something to compel somebody to take action on that whatever outcome you're desiring them to take action on. So if you're going to try and sell Ryan something, it's like, hey, I have the perfect business opportunity for you to work at home in your boxers. You never have to leave and you'll make $1 million. Ryan's going to buy it. You just have to convince him to do it. And that's copywriting. So, yeah.
Early 20s,
like,
Ryan.
I'm in.
100%. Yeah. I'm in. No, not so much, but.
Who would you say has influenced you the most as a writer?
I mean, in some ways, John Holtzman influenced me a lot because he coached me for those 3 years. He was, redlining everything I did, and I had to rewrite. So, I mean, he had a huge influence. In terms of authors or classics or legends or whatever, I always really liked Claude Hopkins. I love his book, Scientific Advertising.
Okay. Yeah.
And I've read it 3 times along with My Life in Advertising. And I felt like the way that he wrote, I know people say it's old fashioned, but he packed so much meaning in very short sentences. It's not complicated stuff that he was writing. So he had a big influence on me.
Well, that's what's so fascinating about copywriting is the less complex it is, usually the better it does. It doesn't have to be overwritten or overly not using big words or anything like that. It's just very. I think when I was going through training, it's like, yeah, you want to write on a 5th grade level. Mm-hmm. Like you want people to understand what you're writing. So Claude Hopkins was a big influence. John Holtzman. Anybody else? Or anything in general that really influenced the way that you kind of evolved as a writer?
I mean, Breakthrough Advertising by Eugene Schwartz. I read that many years ago. I've reread sections of it. That one impacted me. Al Reese's book on branding, positioning and branding. So I would say Al Reese had a pretty big influence. Seth Godin, back when I was reading Free Prize Inside and Purple Cow, those books in particular influenced me quite a lot. I'm trying to think if there's what other ones. Yeah, I read all the time.
And Makepeace at all, Clayton?
Clayton had less of an influence on me. I wasn't as tied in with his world.
I got his newsletter for a while.
Yeah.
The Screaming Eagle. That one was pretty good.
Yeah. Oh, Carlton.
There you go.
John Carlton had a huge influence on me because I bought his freelancer course, which you can't get anywhere really. But that thing really helped me out with getting clients, and his Rebel Rant and whatever the course was called.
Aren't you blocked by him now on Facebook? Yeah.
Yeah. He
what? Why?
I don't know. It was just one day I used to see his updates. This is a few years ago now, but I used to see his updates, and I like to read his updates, because he's a good writer, and I like his stuff. And I went, I haven't heard from John or seen anything from him in a long time. I wonder what he's up to. So I type in John Carlton, and I'm like, I can't find him. And I check my friends list. He's not there, And so then I posted about it, and some other people verified, no, he's still online. He's still on Facebook. He's still posting. I'm like, okay, then I guess I'm blocked, And a couple other conservative people decided to look up, see if they were blocked, and guess what? Yeah. They were all blocked as well.
They were blocked.
They were blocked, and which
I have never understood. It's super hilarious. I've never understood. I've got some wildly liberal friends, and I appreciate the heck out of them. I would never block them for their stuff. Yeah. It's if anything, I'll sit there and go, okay, I'm so far on the other side of this topic. Let me. I want to know more. Maybe there's something I'm missing. Maybe not, but I don't know. It at least causes me to question myself. I don't like being in my own echo chamber. That's not helpful.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree with you. But what makes me laugh about that whole situation is Carlton is famous for saying that copywriters need to see the world as it is and not how you want it to be. You have to see the world as it is and not how you want it to be. But blocking people like that, to me, says that he's not able to see the world how it is. He's only trying to see the world how he wants it to be. So I'm like, it's a little funny.
I think there's so many things right now that are making that. So the latter statement, about seeing the world, or not seeing it that way, being able to actually truly see the world, in the way that it is, and not the way you necessarily want it to be. I think that's a much harder thing to accomplish now. I don't think and I think obviously the tech platforms are serving that up to us, and only enhancing that experience, where I think just about everybody can be in their own echo chambers if they really want to be.
100%, yeah.
Or whether they actually want to be or not, it can happen.
All right, I just took us way off track. So you decided, freelance copywriting. That was
you had to do
it. Got some clients, and all of a sudden, it looks like you're cooking with gas.
Yeah. So, what happened next was I just kept going, and I kept writing copy and getting better and building my network, and I did have a really rough patch in 2012 up until about September, October 2013. $75,000 of debt. Clients telling me that the check is in the mail, but the check is not in the mail, and going overdraft because I had no money in my bank account. Even though
it's not a fun feeling. It's not a fun feeling.
It was horrible. We've been a single income family since, let's see, we got married in 1999, so about 2001.
Okay.
So, it was all on me. And at the time I had, I had 4 kids at the time. House, 2 cars, all that stuff. And luckily my father and... Good?
No, I was just saying that's some weight to carry, man.
Yeah, it was a lot. It all kind of happened because of losing a key client suddenly and unexpectedly. Adam actually helped me solve that. Yeah. That question I had about that client years later. So anyway, that's another story. But yeah, that client pulled the plug on all the work that he was sending me, and we had some medical bills and blah blah blah. My father-in-law gave us a cash gift to help float us, and then at that point, all of a sudden, everything turned around. I got my best client that I'd ever gotten to that point, and he was with me for almost 9 years, so 8.5 years on retainer, and I got a bunch of other clients that next year. 2014 was my best year ever, and then 2015 was better than 2014. So it's I went from my worst year ever in 2013 to having this rebound, almost like a slingshot or something.
It's interesting how that happens. It's not for the people that for the people that stay in the game, like that don't check out of the game, that seems to be a pretty consistent trend where like they go through a really, really tough time period and they're just forced to get super gritty and scrappy, and they sometimes have to pivot, and then they end up evolving into this new version of themselves. But what else enabled you? What enabled you to make it through that time period? Because lots of times, I mean, especially if you got 4 kids and you got a house and you got 2 cars and all the things that come along with that, that's a lot. I mean, what stopped you from saying, all right, you know what? Or even your wife saying, hey, like enough's enough. Like, I know you want to do this, but like we got to have money coming. Just go get a job and like let's just get to it.
I mean, I think part of it was because I had clients owed me money at that time, and so I think part of it was like, okay, like it's going to be here today. No, it's not here today. It's going to be here today. No, it's not here today. I think we forget today how just 10 years ago, a lot of clients were still mailing checks.
Right.
Now everything's ACH,
wires and PayPal, and
everything. But and the other thing was just my faith. So I prayed a lot, and I really do think it was a trial that God put me through to say, hey, who writes your paycheck, me or those guys? And it was God. God is the one who writes that paycheck. And so I think it was a trial and a testing of my faith, and at least that's how I view it. So, yeah.
And when did that start for you? Like when did you really, like when did you become a Christian? And how's that been?
So I kind of grew up in the church, and when I was 4 years old at the dinner table, my parents asked me to pray, and I said, bless this food and Jesus come into my heart. And my mom goes, what did you just say? Jesus come into my heart? I don't know. That's what I'm supposed to say, right?
Every night.
Come into my heart. And so, every night. So there's really not a time that I can't remember not being a Christian, if that makes sense. So
it does.
Yeah. So there's obviously different levels of maturity over time and things that God puts you through that, like, do you really believe, or do you just sort of believe?
Yeah.
So when you went through that time period, did you lean? So it sounds like you leaned on your faith, in a different way than you perhaps did leading up to that point.
100%. I mean, when you got nothing else.
Yeah.
I was trying everything every day. I'm like, I was doing so well, and all of a sudden it was just like somebody turned off the spigot. This was after the financial crisis, so it wasn't 2009. I actually did pretty well through 2008, 2009, 2010. So all of a sudden to have this kind of echo crisis in 2012 and 2013, I'm like, where's this coming from? Like, what's happening? And I would get up in the mornings, I'd reach out to people. I was every day I was trying to get the business. It just wasn't closing. So sometimes you can do everything within your power and things still don't work out.
Do you think that if you
That's true.
hadn't shown up every single day and tried to make things work, that you would have experienced the kind of success that you had on the other side of 2013?
I mean, it's really hard to say. Probably not. I was probably laying the foundation for that really good year that I had. I mean, really what turned things around was a referral from a friend of mine, Brian, who I'm still in touch with today. He was the one who referred me to Mike and Dedicated Emails. And
So you worked with Mike and those guys.
Yeah, Mike and Brian.
Oh, yeah.
And that kind of is what turned around my business. And in hindsight, the big revelation that I had was all of my best years as a freelance copywriter, I had at least one solid retainer agreement. And then after I kind of lost that quasi retainer that I had, it just didn't work as well. When you're going from gig to gig to gig and you're always waiting for somebody to pay you who says they're going to pay you but then doesn't pay you or whatever, that's really challenging because the bills don't wait. The bills keep going every 30 days. Click, 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 click. So
Yeah.
I made sure after that point that I always had at least one, but preferably 3 solid retainers at a time.
Holy Trinity. Sorry.
And that's what you're still doing. And that's what you're still. That's kind of what you adhere to this day.
I would, but I transitioned again in 2022 to
Okay.
a new business model. So at that time, through a mutual business, well, it's a client of mine and a friend of my business partners, she connected us and we partnered up, and we now own Upsender, which is an email list management agency.
Mm-hmm.
I was already doing email list management for some clients, and so we and Justin was just getting into this space, but we partnered up, pooled our clients, pooled our assets and resources and everything, and began building that in it was August of 2022. Had never met in person, but partnership has been great. It's been fantastic. The timing was perfect because later that fall was when AI kind of blew up. I think it was December 2022. And so, yeah, I don't really do much freelance copywriting anymore. We now have a team, so we have 5 people, and we're hiring the 6th. He starts on Monday. So
Was that
plus me
intentional?
And Justin.
The
So
not
we're just-
doing freelance copywriting anymore.
What?
Did you find that you were making a decision to move into ownership of a business over serving businesses?
Yeah. I mean, we are serving businesses
as
still.
like,
It's still a
like
service-based
as a
business, but
as a contract worker essentially, and not actually. Yeah.
correct. Yeah, because here's what happened is, as a freelance copywriter, there's a ceiling to what you can earn consistently. So I did really well where I made a very good income, almost the same amount of money 6 years in a row. And there were only a couple of ways that I could change that. One was if I kind of went in-house with a place that pays royalties, or, I had tried royalties before, but people had tried to rip me off royalties, and, like, royalties is always the dream, but let me tell you, it's not exactly.
It's hard. It's hard to get unless you actually have full transparency into like the books and everything else.
Correct. Yeah, correct. And so that never worked super well for me because I was freelancing. It does work well if you go full-time in-house with a company that routinely pays royalties to copywriters. But as a freelancer outside the company, it's a lot harder to get those arrangements and to get paid for those arrangements. So I realized I had a problem with my business model, and I needed a new business model with more leverage if I ever wanted to get beyond where I was at. And I had sought out coaches and like people and stuff, and it was like I had just kind of maxed out what you can do as a copywriter, as a 100% freelance copywriter. So
Well, yeah, and there's a lot of scale to email. So
Yeah.
if, you can build a team and you can start servicing more businesses. And there's I think with freelance copywriting, there's a little bit of a lag there, right? Where you write copy and then you're dependent upon them actually deploying the copy to be able to actually see revenue come from that. Whereas with email, like you can see it pretty quick. Like
yes,
emails have to get deployed quickly. It doesn't take a long time to write email copy.
yes,
Or not as long. I mean, if you're writing big long campaigns, it can take longer, obviously. But so that makes a ton of sense. And for anybody that's listening, like, and you're going like, how the heck does somebody make so much money from email? Like, there are companies that make hundreds of millions of dollars a year out of marketing through their email lists. So it is a great channel. And I'll tell you what, where that really showed up, man. I was doing a lot of email management and was building lists during the pandemic. And you want to talk about like watching revenue be made from email. Everyone was sitting at home and they were opening up emails. I'd never seen anything like that ever. It was crazy.
Oh wow, yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. So anyway, so got it. So you're cool. So you've got this. So you've got Upsender now, and you said that started in 2020.
2022, August.
2022. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So we're still pretty young. It's a pretty young business, but doing well. I know Adam asked if I was still doing copywriting. I still write email copy, and I still have offered a package to certain clients where I offer to beat their control email. So for people who may not know what that means, a control email is the highest performing email for a particular offer, right? So you send that email and it produces more sales or more revenue than other emails that they've written and tested. So the control email is just the best email they've ever come up with. So then my job is to come in there and write something that's better, and that when we split test them head to head on an A/B split test, my email consistently wins, either in terms of, usually it's just a revenue metric. So so the way I do it is, my email's got to win like 3 different tests on 3 different lists before we can kind of say that we have a high confidence that this is the new winner. And so I've done that, and that's like, it's expensive. It's like $5,000 to write, $5,000 to write an email. Obviously there's more involved because
Sure.
I usually end up having to write more than one email, and I have to run, a lot of different split tests on the lists that we manage to find that winner. So but I am kind of getting away from even doing that, because that kind of pulls me away from higher level business stuff. So
now you just focus on trying to build and train the team so that they can essentially execute on, all the things that you've learned and the systems that you've
Correct.
created for yourself over the years.
Yep. Yeah. So I'm the systems guy, so I create the procedures and systems, and usually when we get a new client, like I get in there and figure out what the client needs or one other person on our team, and then I hand it off to somebody. So like this next week, I'll be training our new hire on a couple of the accounts that I handle.
Yeah, how do you like it?
That's awesome, man.
How do you like it compared to
That's really cool to hear.
freelance copywriting work?
I love it. It's great. I mean, I love being able to help other people and help them grow in their careers and training them. And then I also like building systems, and I like having leverage in a business so that it's not just all me, That works great. I still have that part of me that, that thinks nobody does it better and it's got to be me and all that. But that's it's kind of a limiting belief.
Yeah.
So, and it might work in your 20s and 30s, but at a certain point, do I really want to be gigging, like getting gigs in my 50s and 60s and going from one project to the next? Well, probably not,
No, but you've done a good job of recognizing in your career when it's time to pivot. Is how it looks from just looking from the outside in.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense. Not everybody's able to make that recognition. I mean, to go from being the guy and writing, as a freelance copywriter and putting packages together and doing that, it's a very different discipline than it is hiring people and training people and getting people to all move in a singular or organized manner going one way. That's a anyway, pivot. I mean, it's essentially you reinvented yourself.
Yeah,
Thank you. Yeah.
Man, and you're OG. I knew you'd been in the game for a long time, but that's like, you're like OG. Like, I mean, you were doing email newsletters like before people even knew they were happening, which is really freaking awesome.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, it's timing of it, I guess, worked out that way,
Yeah. Absolutely, right place, right time, and then the right person who recognizes the opportunity.
Yeah.
Man, that's awesome. Do you have any advice for anyone that's trying to kind of find their path right now? Because there's more options now than I think there's ever been. Like, there's so much static and noise out there. I mean, you could take the standard routes. You can try and be an influencer now and build a big following. Like, you could be a copywriter, because whether people know it or not, there's copywriting taking place on all the platforms we're all looking at right now.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, definitely. If it's hard to give specific advice, not knowing a person or what their interests are, things like that. But I see a lot of technology that has come into place, and there's an opportunity sometimes when technology is new or fresh or different or whatever, right? So when AdWords was new, there was a huge opportunity there. When Facebook ads was new, there was a huge opportunity there. When YouTube was newish and doing video ads, there's a big opportunity there. So I would say a lot of success is a little bit dependent on timing. So it has to do with recognizing some of those new opportunities or those new developments, and recognizing that window of time where you can build something. And it's going to be easier for you to build during that time than it is if you wait for 2 or 3 or 4 years. So, right now, I haven't done this personally, but I've heard there's a lot of opportunity on TikTok Shop. And I've heard that from multiple sources. So my son has kind of stumbled into it, and we're trying to get him up and running, but he started a TikTok channel just posting Bible verses, and now he's got one post with over 1 million views, and he's got over 10,000 followers.
How many followers?
Over 10,000 followers.
That's awesome.
I'm like, what? I'm like, how did
That's
you do
fantastic.
this?
Like, wait, hold on. Let's take a look at this. Like,
Yeah. So then I entered my information on his account so that he could use TikTok Shop to do some affiliate promotion. So he ordered a cross bracelet and something else, and so he's planning to do some videos to try to see how that works. And for him and his personality type, I think it's a great opportunity for him. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's very cool. How old are the kids now?
So let's see, 21 and married, 19, 16, 11, she's turning 12 in a couple weeks, and 8 and 6. So,
bro,
haven't you ever heard of birth control?
Widespread.
Jeez.
yeah, it is. Yeah. He's saying that because he knows.
That's awesome.
When I tell people I have 6 kids, that's usually one of the first things they say is, haven't you heard of birth control? Or they say something like, are you Catholic? Are you Mormon?
Are you Irish?
Yeah, I am Irish.
There you go.
Another one is, all the same woman. That's another question, I guess.
Oh, gosh.
Nah.
Yes, definitely yes. Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. Well, dude, congrats on a really cool, exciting career and taking advantage of the opportunities and family. And I mean, that's kind of going back to the purpose of the podcast. I mean, to me, that's patriotic. You're living your best life. You're taking care of your family. You're providing jobs. Like you're enabling commerce to take place, which, fuels the economy. Like, I mean, that's you're doing it, man.
Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah.
Now, what I'm curious about now is what are we going to pivot to next, Adam? Are we going to get into some of the other stuff?
Cool to watch too, because you were my mentor. You're what got me into the internet marketing space. At least actually get a toe in. I'd done all the work before, and then you were.
He brings you up quite a bit, Ryan.
Well, you were
credits
gracious
you for a
enough
number of
to
things.
Thank you.
Basically offload some of the work that you didn't have time for during your difficult season, which is that's what's really funny is it would have been 2012 when we first started talking. Like I wrote him a sales page to take him out to a very nice steak dinner so I could show him how he was going to make a lot of money from this relationship. And I don't think you could quantify it, but I would imagine that there's been quite a bit of money made because of the relationship that we formed. And I can't take any credit for Upsender, but I do remember
Definitely.
It's probably 4 or 5 years ago when I transitioned inside of our company from being the copywriter to saying, look, I'm going to actually have equity stake in this. I'm going to be acting as an owner partner, and I care less about copywriting and I care more about owning a business. And I was trying to, I don't know if I was directing this, but I was trying to translate that to Ryan. I was saying, I think that freelance copywriting is a good way to make a living, but I don't think it's a good way to become a millionaire. And so that was, I don't know if there was any, well, maybe you can answer. You're here. I don't know if you were watching anything that was happening with us and you're thinking, hey, yeah, I should probably ditch the freelance copywriting and try and own my own business instead.
Yeah. I mean, seeing you get in with the business and become an equity owner and all that stuff, I was like, dang, he's doing this before I was able to do this, And so, yeah, definitely. I was watching what you were doing, and it was inspiring to see you do that and become successful so quickly. So, yeah.
That's what happens when you find mentors, man. Your mentors should help you accelerate success. That's I would say that's the definition of being a really good mentor. So can add another one to the list for Ryan Healy.
I would not be here without this
that's
guy.
legit.
There's no possible. Well, maybe there's a possible way because God's big and He could make it happen. But just knowing my trajectory, I moved to Denver from Salt Lake City to meet this guy. I mean, I'm watching. I'm on the internet.
That's wild.
Copywriters in Denver, and I happened
awesome.
to have met a girl, and that also inspired me to move. But I'm just thinking, nothing's going to happen here for me in Salt Lake City, and I had tried to get a bunch of freelance copywriting gigs there for all the work for nothing. And so, I don't know what we pivot to other than to say thank you for being who you are and helping me get to this place. And now we have a podcast because of it, where I think we were 37 on the charts this past
week. I think we were in the last week or so, which was really awesome.
It's amazing. It's
pretty
incredible.
cool to see the. Well, and who would have known too that Adam would have become like a Billy Blanks, where he's got like tens of millions of views on all the different videos he's done.
I'm hoping to
selling products now.
Seriously,
2 months. Fingers crossed.
Adam's a natural.
Let's do it. He really is. That was one of the first things that jumped out at me when the first time I was like, dang, when I ended up partnering with these guys, I was like, we just need to keep Adam in front of a camera. Like, let's just figure out how to do that. Like,
we'll
figure out the rest.
It's wild too. Like me surfing the internet, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, there's Adam.
There he is.
I would be
there he is on
super
video.
stoked
Hey,
if
Adam.
most Americans had seen me. Most conservative Americans will probably have seen me in the next 6 months. Just because I know that there's a big target market that doesn't really get marketed holsters and survival products, but there's a even larger market online that does. And that's actually, that's a good thing to talk about, is just what we're having to deal with in terms of as patriots, as people who own businesses, who are looking to provide for our family, maintain our way of life. There's actively a war against us, and I don't think anybody can argue that. It's it's corroborated every single day when we see the release of the Twitter files, or we see how there's secret agreements amongst Mark Zuckerberg and the FBI to, not publish information that could disparage the son of the president and paint him in a bad light. So I love talking about this kind of stuff with you. I think that for the people who are listening who do know Ryan or who are lucky enough to be his friend on Facebook, you do have some contrarian opinions. I love them. I think they're great. I don't believe all of them. That's totally fine though, because I think in the world of where there is so much polarization between people who have an opinion on this side and this side, you're one of the only people who is able to hold fast to your opinions and also be gracious to people who don't agree with you, even though they're often very malicious. So it's a lot.
I love reading your Facebook posts. Like you dance with that extremely well. Yeah, you treat everybody with respect.
They throw punches, and then you just sit there and dodge them, and you smile. You're like, "Oh, that was really nice. Let me tell you a little bit more, so you can punch at me again."
That was a good punch.
Yeah, I don't know.
I haven't posted anything too controversial in a while, but maybe it's time.
I don't know. How do you feel about this upcoming election? I don't need to know who you're going to vote for, even though I probably could guess. But how do you feel about what's going to happen? Do you think that there's going to be a lot of foul play? Do you think that the right person's going to win? What are your general thoughts on what's coming in November?
I think, to quote Q, nothing can stop what is coming.
That could go either way, because I think that he's not going to win. I think that he's going to win on paper. I think he's going to win probably the Electoral College, but I think that the Dominion systems are going to give all of the votes to Biden. I don't see Trump becoming president personally, even though I would. Yeah.
I have a hard time. Yeah, I have a hard time believing they'll let it happen.
Okay. I guess I fall on the other side of that. I've believed since before the 2020 election happened that Trump would be a two-term president. So I'm still kind of holding to that. I think he'll be a two-term president, and I think that we are going to see cleaning of house. I think that he will be successful ultimately in what he set out to do in the beginning, which was to drain the swamp. There are certain things, if you want to get conspiratorial, like I don't believe that the Biden in the White House is the same Biden that was present during the Obama years.
Now, do you mean that like physically or like
body snatch.
mentally not the
Physically.
same?
Physically,
Okay.
it's two different
Okay.
guys.
Yeah, you can
It's
look
two
at the
different guys.
years, some of the other things that they've
you-
done.
Yeah.
Is there
Right.
any actual explanation for the ear thing? Because I've
No.
seen that too, and I'm like, God, that's weird. Like, that's definitely odd.
You'll have a handful of people claim that cosmetic surgery could do that, like through a tightening or an extreme tightening, and would pull the ear or something. But I'm like, I don't believe it. What you either have a detached lobe or an attached lobe, and it's very clear that I don't remember which one, but the original Biden had one type of earlobe, and I think the new Biden has an attached lobe instead of detached.
Mm-hmm.
But it gets even more dramatic if you do side-by-side photo comparisons or do side-by-side video comparisons. Watch the cadence of their speech. Look at their brow and the facial expression. The brow is very different, and the eye shape is also very different. So I mean, they're similar enough that he can pass for the original Biden. But
So why would they
I don't believe it's
replace
the original Biden.
one idiot
And then
with
right
another
after-
idiot? That's my only question.
Maybe because they killed the first one.
Jeez.
They executed him. I don't think he's alive. I think he's dead.
That's
But
So who is or what is this current version, in your opinion?
I think he's just a puppet. I think he's there to kind of be the punching bag or the distraction or the whatever, or to be the setup for this coming election. I don't know. I mean, I could speculate. I don't know all the reasons why, but there were some super weird things that happened like right after he was elected.
Like what?
It was clear that he wasn't in the Oval Office.
Oh, okay.
It was a set. He was on a set.
When he accepted?
He wasn't even in the White House.
Yeah.
And you're like, why are they filming on a set? And of course, I got really into the Q drops. I started from like the second week that they started dropping. So I've read all 4,000, some of them, in real time as they were happening. But there were a lot of clues that he was just acting or not the real president. So I don't really know, to be honest, what's gone on the last 4 years, what the purpose of it is, or whatever. In some ways, I think they had to have an administration to take the fall for the debt levels and the economic problems and the fallout from the vaccines and all that. So there could be a purpose in how they plan this out.
Yeah, I haven't heard that he's been outright replaced, but I do remember seeing photos of his brow, photos of his ears, and everybody just calling into question what's going on here. I haven't thought too much about that, but I guess it makes sense that they would replace that guy. I mean, why not, right? If you can, why wouldn't you? Especially if you just need to. I mean, what if he did die?
Yeah.
That would be another thing. They clearly don't want to give the office of president to Kamala. Like, nobody wants to die that bad, so they're not going to do that.
No. He might not. Yeah. He might drop out of the race. He might be removed in the race. Like, I have a hard time believing that Biden will be on the ballot in November.
When's that
But
debate?
maybe he will be.
Between him
If
and
he
Trump.
is, it's like they're putting up an extremely weak candidate. That's for sure. I mean,
Yeah,
I even had get this. I even had my Canadian friend, and he's he's liberal, as are many Canadians. And he said to me, this is 1 day ago. He said, I'm seeing a lot of footage of Biden drifting off and appearing completely despondent. Is he actually lapsing into dementia, or are some of these deep fakes? And I thought that was fascinating.
That's interesting.
That my liberal Canadian friend wanted me.
Was that a copywriter that we know? That liberal
Yeah.
Canadian friend? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, they're going to debate on the 27th, so if that actually happens. Jeez, got 13 days to see. Yeah, exactly.
Debate.
That's exciting.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see how that goes.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I still wish they would have gotten on Joe Rogan's show, like he invited them to.
That would have been awesome.
Would have been.
Yeah.
Would have been. That would have been a great venue for that conversation to take place.
Yeah.
Joe's one of the few people that really can play both sides.
Right.
And be really fantastic with his questions. And
everybody would know where his studio is then if he did that. Because the amount of Secret Service it would have, the amount of Secret Service would
That's
be
true.
out there would be
That's
astronomical.
True. Yeah, he would probably have to set up an entirely different studio just for that. He
Okay.
probably would put in a bigger venue. That's probably one of those things where he'd probably do that where there could be a live audience and, I don't know, make it a much big event, like put it in the middle of the Moody Center in downtown Austin or something like that.
Huh. I think it was so disappointing about the debates that happened back in, I guess 2020, was these moderators were so biased. They're just throwing softballs to the liberal candidates and then, giving these loaded questions to Trump, like, why do you beat your wife every night? That kind of question. Wait, what? How do I answer
your
that?
children know that you beat your wife every night?
There is.
Yes. No. Nah. You got it. Yeah, I just have a really... Go ahead, Nate.
What scares... I was going to say, what scares you the most right now, Ryan? Just like watch. What scares you the most and what gives you the most hope?
Huh.
Or maybe scare is not the right word. What causes the greatest concern, or what you're watching with the most scrutiny of, like, that's interesting, that's a little alarming.
I guess I think of it maybe more in terms of my kids, but just everybody being on phones and everybody being tethered to these things and on videos and TikTok and Instagram and how that influences and shapes a child's perception of the world and also stunts their curiosity and their ability to be creative. That concerns me a lot because I feel like the repercussions are going to last for decades.
Right.
It's not something that I think is easily fixable. And it's a struggle because I don't know if you have kids in that tween age or whatever, but as soon as they hit that, they're asking for phones. And
oh yeah.
Well, why? Because, my friend has a phone. You're like, what? Like, come on,
Yeah, we held off on the phones for a pretty long time. And even after they got them, they were highly monitored and, it was, but we did push off as long as we thought we probably could have gone a little bit longer, but so far it seems it's been okay. I had an interesting conversation recently, and I think a combination of like what's happening with the devices and how that's affecting things, as well as, what happened when we, isolated, all the kids for 2, in some cases, almost 3 years because of the pandemic and all the social intelligence that did not get developed during that time period, and the anxiety and the other things that got inserted instead. I was talking to a teacher here in our school district recently, and very recently, almost somewhere north of 30% of the kids are now all testing for special eds needs.
Whoa.
I mean, and it's never been that high ever. And she was like, there's like, they legit need to be like in the resource center.
Wow. Did they know where that comes from?
Yeah.
Nate?
I mean, I know.
She really, based on, like just what she's watched, and, she's a teacher, pre-pandemic and post-pandemic, she feels like it was something that was kind of already looming, but that the isolation and like that 2 to 3 year gap, really accelerated the problems. And a lot of there's a lot of social anxiety, a lot of social intelligence that wasn't developed. And then too, most homes have 2 parents that are working, and like the kids were left to their own, to try and teach them, basically try and learn from teachers over Zoom, which I can tell you, like when I was that age, if someone tried to teach me over Zoom, like there's no chance like I'd have done anything. Like
I would it'd have been like Home Alone, just like back and forth on a train, just like
100%, man. I'd have been like zooming. I'd have been zooming from like Surfside, like on a 5G network, like surfing, surfing between breaks.
It's that one
like,
guy
been,
who
like, would not
he
have...
dresses like with a big butt prosthesis, and I don't know. Yes, and he's on a Zoom call getting beat up by a boxer on a roller coaster.
Yes,
that guy's.
Or he's on a motorcycle.
But I do think that's it. Like, I believe that the absence of parents in the home during that time where they were isolated would have probably been the worst part about all of it, because obviously a child is helped socializing with other children, but if they can socialize with an adult on a consistent basis, that's going to benefit them probably even more so, because now you're interfacing with somebody who's more sophisticated, more mature than you, so you'll probably level up. Like, my child is 6 years old, is homeschooled, and in so many ways, he's far more mature than other 6-year-olds, and he gets a pretty good amount of socialization with other kids. But just watching him interact with adults, it's mind blowing, because the most of the people that he interacts with daily are adults. So I think that whole thing of having a mom out of the home and in the workplace is just probably one of the worst things for society altogether. So I was curious if she would have diagnosed it as that, your teacher friend.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about that part specifically, but she definitely felt like, the social isolation was a really, really big deal, and that it kind of spiked whatever else was kind of already there, which was probably, aspects of what Ryan was talking about, the devices and the way that's also, because I mean, I watch, the way the kids interact, that are my kids' ages when I'm at school events and, the different games and things like that. And it's like, it's just not the same. Like, they don't interact the same way. The boys are talking to the girls a lot later. Like, the girls are not really too keen to talk on the guys because they're so awkward, and the girls are awkward on top of it. So it's, I mean, and again, this is my own little world I live in, I watch this, so it doesn't mean that that's the case for everyone out there, or, but it's, just from the corner of world that I can observe things from, so what'd you think about the most recent, what'd you think about the convictions that just took place with Trump?
Say that one more time. You're talking about the
felony convictions,
the trial.
Yeah. Like him being found guilty. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I think it was a sham trial. I think all of this has been a witch hunt, and I do think Trump's description of it is accurate. That it's election interference. That the timing of it was intentional, leading up to the election to derail his ability to campaign and to paint him in a negative light. I think all of this is going to backfire ultimately. It's kind of like when somebody gets too beat up on, it can actually create sympathy for that person.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is happening with Trump. It's like even people who aren't on the right are going like, okay, good grief, like, give this guy a break. I mean, he's faced nothing but criticism and trials and tribulations since he first got elected in like 2016.
Yeah.
So at a certain point, I think there are certain people who will never wake up. They will never wake up. But there are some in the middle, and I think they are becoming a little bit more aware of what's happening and how they're trying to prevent him from being in office again. And I think it's going to backfire.
I think it's kind of interesting what you said about people in the middle waking up to it. I know that I follow this guy, Austin Peterson, on Instagram. He was a candidate for the Libertarian Party in 2016. I don't know if you remember back to that. So he was running against Johnson, and now he's pro-Trump. So he went to the Republican Party for a congressional run, I think in the state of Missouri, because he realized, it's okay to be libertarian in your actual political beliefs, but if you're going to be on the political like if you're going to identify as that party and then try and run on that ticket, good luck getting anything done. And so he has just watched recently the Libertarian Party's presidential candidate is some LGBTQIA plus affirming weirdo, like just probably dresses in a dress and, you know, all that kind of stuff. And he's just saying to himself, the Libertarian Party just pushed as many people as they possibly could into the arms of the Republican Party voting for Trump. Yeah. And he almost wonders if that was, he was like, I wonder if 100%. They did that on purpose just to steal votes away from the left. And then also to push a bunch of people.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, funny thing was I kind of had my libertarian phase
we all
back when Ron Paul was running for president. I was a big Ron Paul supporter. I was not a Mitt Romney supporter. There's no way I could ever vote for Mitt Romney. But during that time, New Hampshire was doing the Free State Project.
Yes.
Did you guys ever hear about that?
Mm-mm.
Free State Project, the idea was to get a certain number of libertarian-minded people to all move to New Hampshire. And once a certain number of pledges had been signed, then all those people who had pledged would then actually move to New Hampshire and then kind of help shape the state and its future, right? So preserve its freedom and all that. I mean, New Hampshire is kind of well known for live free or die. But what I realized about libertarianism is that New Hampshire attracted two very different types of people. One would be maybe described more as a traditional patriot, right? So religious, probably Christian, raising kids, man married to a wife, you know, who's actually a woman, that sort of stuff. But then it also attracted the very opposite of that, libertarian type of person, which would be the LGBTQ crowd, who wasn't necessarily activist in their point of view, but they just wanted to be left alone. So I went, okay, that's really weird. So you've got some, I'll just say, kind of crazy left wing, but they're libertarian, but with socially left, right? And then you have libertarian socially right. So it's libertarian doesn't work unless there's some sort of moral code, right? And if there is no moral code or moral law, it cannot work.
Right. I used to think that Jesus was a libertarian because I thought to myself, he wants you to do what you want until you find a time in your life where you realize that it's not working for you and you're going to turn to him. And then I realized, he never wants you to do what you want. He always wants you to do the right thing and follow him. Like, there's never been a point in time where God has said, I would love for you to follow something else until you find your way back from me or back to me. Never. Same thing with Jesus. I mean, he's never saying, yeah, it's okay, just have your teenage phase. That's fine. You'll see your way back. That's all I want. It's obedience from the get. And then it's always one of these, hey, you're a dumb sheep that got out of the sheepfold. I'm going to go and have to get out of here, leave the other sheep behind, and find you, pick you up on my back, and then carry you back, you dumb sheep. So I don't know when I abandoned I think I still have libertarian principles, which are ultimately, hey, leave me alone. I'm not hurting anybody with my traditional marriage and my guns that I own and the business that I'm running. But I just can't, like you said, you can't be on board when there's just this schism in the party where it's either unhinged in a sense or here on the other side.
Right.
Probably just going to get censored for saying that. I'm sure. What gives you hope, Ryan? Because that was one of the things that Nate had asked about, what are you afraid, or not afraid of, but fearful of in terms of what's going on now. But what gives you hope?
Yeah, what gives me hope is, I know Christians have believed this sort of thing for many, many years about return of Christ or whatever, but I do think we are at the end of that period of time, and my ideal is a benevolent monarchy with Jesus as king. So I'm optimistic and hopeful that we'll get to see that come to fruition in our lifetimes. and it might not. You know, I'm not saying that. I'm not giving a specific date or anything like that, but I've studied a lot of that sort of thing over the years, over the last 20 years, and I think there are good reasons to believe that he
What do you
he
think?
will return soon.
What would
So,
haste the day? What would make that happen, in your opinion? Well, like what are the
what would make it happen?
what are the
Like,
additional
I don't know
dominoes that
there's
you see falling that would probably preempt him coming?
I believe it more from a timing perspective. So I have a book called Secrets of Time, where Dr. Stephen Jones mapped out how many years from Adam, not this Adam, but the original Adam, how many years from Adam it's been until today, and then all the significant events that have happened along the way, along with different time cycles that appear in the Bible, like the time cycle of 210, which ties back to 21, which is the time of Jacob's trouble, and there's 390, which is no king in Israel. There's all the different Jubilee cycles. So 1986 was 120 Jubilees from Adam, and 120 is the number of the Holy Spirit. It has to do with the outpouring of the Holy Spirit, and there's a whole bunch of stuff in there, but that's a very deep study on time cycles. So that also gets into biblical law and some of the weird things in the biblical law that may not make sense to our carnal minds, but then ultimately make sense in the spiritual mind. So, like in terms of how far the distance between, I think it was the Ark of the Covenant and the body, that and the Israelites who followed behind, something like 2,000 cubits or something, which represented the difference between the head, Jesus is the head, and the body, and the 2,000-year gap that had to happen after his crucifixion before he could return again in his second incarnation. So, and then there's also birthing laws about the cleansing laws when you have a boy versus a female, like a boy versus a girl. There's different periods of cleansing that ties in with that prophesies of Christ's return. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that is just really fascinating to dig into. So I'm hopeful
I was
of
gonna
that.
say, do you think the things that are happening with the advent of near intelligent general AI or near sentient general AI, the transhumanism movement, the disclosure around aliens and all of that kind of stuff kind of ties into this time cycle, since it's all happening right here in a compressed amount of time?
Yeah, it certainly could. I think it all comes back to man trying to be God. And I think that's what man's been trying to do since the beginning of time, is to be God. I don't know that they'll succeed with a truly sentient AI or anything like that, but I think they're trying. That gets into genetics and cloning and all those different areas, right?
Yeah, and I had cut you off, so I think you were going to finish off your thought before I injected that.
Oh, yeah, I forget. There's other stuff prophetically with Trump as well. You're probably familiar with some of it. Kim Clement's prophecies.
Yeah, I'm not either.
No, I'm not familiar with
Maybe
those.
you wrote them on Facebook and
Trump.
I didn't remember them. You probably didn't.
I probably did.
You're like, I don't need John Carlton to reblock me.
I probably didn't. Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of fascinating stuff about Trump and things that Kim Clement prophesied about him and that have come true, and also his family and family names.
So who's
and
this
things like that?
prophet that you're talking about? Kim Clement?
Yeah, Kim Clement, Clement. You can probably pull up the videos. Kim Clement, Trump prophecies. Kim died. He died a few years ago. He wasn't that old. I think he was 50s maybe. But he prophesied quite a bit before Trump was elected the first time.
Yeah, I pulled up his stuff. He still has an Instagram. do they call those? Ghost pages or something like that when the person's passed away.
Facebook, they become memorial pages.
Hmm.
Yeah.
It almost looks like Tucker Carlson on one of his things.
What do you think about the alien stuff?
My thought on aliens, I don't believe aliens exist. Number one, not in the sense that there's another physical life form out there. I don't believe there is another physical life form out there. I think that's a lot of hoaxing and a lot of fakery and things like that. I do think at some point they may try to claim an alien invasion, the powers that be, and then use that as justification for lockdowns or martial law, things of that nature. So something, I don't remember who I learned this from, but it was many years ago, is that the end game is to have one world government, right? You can't have, United States and Russia being enemies, and then Russia and whatever other countries being enemies. You can't have all these countries being enemies of each other. You have to have something to unify around. And so the best enemy for that is us, humans. So that's where the COVID pandemic worked really well, is because suddenly we're the enemy now, right? And it's the same thing with the environmental movement, the green movement, right? Who's the enemy? We're the enemy. So if you can unite people around a common enemy, then you can create powerful movements. But it can't be a common enemy over there across the Atlantic Ocean. It has to be a unifying enemy, which is all of us. And then now you've got everybody ratting each other out, right? Oh, they're not wearing a face mask. Oh, they didn't get vaccinated. Oh, he's driving a truck.
They had Thanksgiving.
At the French Laundry.
Yeah, exactly. So stuff like that. I'm not. Yeah. So then aliens could potentially be used in a similar fashion. It's not the same as us being the enemy. I don't know if they would say the aliens are the enemy or that we're the enemy somehow, because we might harm the aliens. I don't know. And there may be a way to convince the people that there has been an alien invasion. I mean, in the early 1900s, when War of the Worlds was put on the radio, H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds, people literally thought there was an alien invasion happening, even though it was a fictionalized story being broadcast over radio. So with the technology they have today, I mean, with what is it, Starlink, and like the way they can do drones, and they're all tethered and paired and all moving in tandem, they have ways, I am sure, to convince the average person that an invasion has taken place, and that now we must comply with whatever our masters tell us to do.
Well, I'm sorry, Ryan. Aliens are real. So is Bigfoot. I think that's a valid theory. I happen to believe that aliens are real. I mean, the Greys and everything like that. Now, who they are, why they're here, what they're doing, that's another question altogether. But I agree with you that whether or not they're real, it's going to be the mechanism by which the one world government is able to seat itself as a truly unified one world government, where all people are more or less governed by this institution and on the same page. Because once you have a common enemy, it's very easy for you to be thinking, well, we can all get together to fight off the aliens, because sure would suck if they totally wiped out humanity. And you already saw the test case with the pandemic and how easy. Well, I don't know, man. I don't think that as many people bought into it as they would like us to believe, but it certainly was eye-opening to see how many people kowtowed to the establishment. Were like, I'll do anything to preserve my current way of living. So
yeah, you probably had about 10 to 20% who are diehard going along with everything. You probably had about 10 to 20% who are against everything, and you have this mushy middle where they just didn't want conflict. So if I'm around people requiring these things, I'm just going to go along to get along. And then and then there's people like me who's just like kicking back and pushing back, and then the people in the middle are getting uncomfortable with me and getting upset at me for for being obstinate.
Did I ever tell you guys?
Just put your
I don't know
mask
if I
on.
told either of you guys
I don't
about
want
this,
to.
but right when masks were becoming a thing, I wrote myself a mask exemption, and it was not one of those that you could buy online for $20. That
No.
was pretty ridiculous. I said, I remember saying, I wrote it in such a way that a copywriter would write it. I said, as Adam Lantelm's certified healthcare practitioner or whatever it was, because I'm thinking to myself, yeah, that's me. I'm responsible for my healthcare. And I just wrote myself a mask exemption, and I used it all over the place. And then one day some guy at a
that's
tire
funny.
shop of all places wouldn't let me come in and pay my bill. Because he's like, this isn't real. I said, yeah, it's 100% real. He's like, well, this isn't from a doctor. And I said, no, it's from a healthcare provider. Me. So, yeah, he made me pay outside. And I just remember thinking to myself, you're a terrible person. My husband's a
Oh my
terrible
gosh.
person.
I bought a mask that was just
Yes.
like you could see my face. You know, it was like
Yeah.
like big holes in it, and then at the top it said placebo. I would wear it. If somebody forced me to wear one, I'd put that on.
So,
Oh, that's funny.
well,
Yeah, that was not a fun season. The thing that was most upsetting to me, like I definitely did not like wearing the mask. I didn't like the way it affected my kids, and it just was something that I feel like it just was a part of the whole inducing fear. But I'd go into our grocery store, and it was at the point where people weren't being forced to wear masks yet. Some people were wearing them, some people weren't. And I walked by this little old lady, and she wasn't that old. She was probably like mid, maybe latter 50s. But I walked by her. We were like in the cereal section, and like, I mean, she literally, like, if she could have jumped like into the cereal boxes, like, I mean, like literally yelled out, like I was like the way that you would yell if you thought someone was about to stab you or hit you with something. Like, that was the way she reacted. And like, you know, it was like in that moment that I was like, all right, like, there are some people who are like legitimately freaked out. Like, and so,
Oh, yeah.
you know,
There were.
I kind of, you know, would make my calls on whether I was going to wear a mask or not based on, you know, kind of weighing in some of those factors. But that was a rough time period for everybody. It was like, there was no win. Like, didn't matter where you were sitting on in that, you know, on that topic.
Right. Yeah.
But
Yeah. It was
no.
not a fun time.
not the cool, not I don't want to, not to totally go back to the alien thing, but like, you know, so Tucker Carlson was on with was on the Sean Ryan show recently, and he was talking about aliens and that, you know, he believes aliens are actually like spiritual beings, and and he didn't reference specifically if, you know, because there's people out there that talk about the Watchers, you know, like that they talk about like in the Book of Enoch, you know, and what was it?
Yeah.
What are they? What are they? There's a term to refer to them, Adam.
Nephilim or no?
No,
Elohim.
I think it was like
Sons of God.
it predated the Nephilim. Predated the Nephilim, like they contributed to the Nephilim existing, like not
It's
like
the
it's not like
sons
the
of
old
God. If
breed,
you're
but it's
looking
something
at
like
Genesis
that.
6, it says the sons of God saw that the daughters of man were desirable and
Yeah.
went down to the earth and bore children with them. So yes, or Elohim would be how it would be written in. I guess that would be in. What is the language they would have written in? Not Aramaic, the ancient Hebrew, I guess. But yeah.
Hebrew.
All right.
Yeah.
And that might be a
I
tough.
kind of buy into that idea that there could be, quote, aliens that are
That's what I
spiritual
believe.
beings, right? So I can vibe with that, and I've thought that before Tucker
Yep.
said that. So
Yeah.
But again, it wouldn't be a physical, like an actual physical being.
Well,
from a
I
different
disagree,
planet.
and it's also
Right.
4:00, and I have got to go. So, yeah, right. I mean, I could talk about aliens.
Wrap
forever,
it
but
up.
Ryan, it was a pleasure to have you on today, and great conversation. Love hearing about your journey.
Thank you.
'cause Obviously, being
Yeah,
intimate
thank
with
you,
it
Ryan.
already, I like hearing it. I love where you've ended up, and obviously, it's also just the beginning for you. Upcender's only 2 years old. Nothing but
Yeah.
blue skies, blue ocean ahead. If anybody wants to find you on Instagram, can they? Or is there any place that people can follow your amazing updates, or do you have too many friends on Facebook and nobody can follow or be friends with you anymore?
On most social media platforms, you can find me at Hey Healy. So that's HeyHealy. So that's my username on most accounts. Every once in a while I get Ryan Healy, but there are a lot of Ryan Healys out there. So,
and if anyone's actually interested in what you're doing with Upsender, where would they go there?
Upsender.com. That's
Okay.
just UPSENDER.
I hear if you sign up with Upsender, you're guaranteed to make $2 million in your first year of business. Doing
I wish I could make a
working
guarantee
from
like
home
that.
in
That'd be
your
pretty
PJs.
amazing.
All right. Well, thanks, Ryan. It was good
Yeah.
to have you on.
Thanks for having me on the show. This is awesome. So you asked great questions. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Absolutely, man. Thank you.